Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And here we are, season 4. Happy New Year, everyone. We're in January, and I have an incredible guest to kick off season 4. And today we're going to talk to Jim Link. Jim is the Chief Human Resources Officer at SHRM. And Jim, I've had you on my list to get you on the show for a while, and I finally have you on, and so excited you're here. How you doing?
Hey, Bruce, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm super excited. I'm doing great. And, it's a beautiful day, and I'm ready to talk about all the exciting things that have been happening and things that we have coming up for the future. So it's a good time.
One of the things, and of course, I always like to reflect on when we met, and we haven't actually met personally, but we've met through our SHRM network. And you posted something in the end of 2022, and it really caught my attention. And you posted something around, hey, let's look back at some things that went on in 2022, and then let's look ahead to 2023. And I thought that would be a great conversation to have to kind of kick off the year as everybody's, now in, we've set our goals. We're in, here we go for another year. But it's always good to kind of hear different perspectives. So I'm glad you're on today. Hey, for those who don't know SHRM, and I'm sure most people do, but there's probably a few people listening that might not know who SHRM is. Would you mind sharing who SHRM is and how do you serve your customers?
Yeah, so SHRM is an acronym for the Society for Human Resource Management. It is the largest HR association in the world with approximately 318,000 members that we serve globally. SHRM provides knowledge, advice, guidance, thought leadership, research, educational opportunities, leadership development opportunities to human resources professionals primarily. However, we're finding more and more that we're sharing our knowledge and resources with all business professionals. And we like to think that the people that we're influencing the most are, of course, chief human resources officers and human resources teams. We kind of think of it as CHROs, CEOs, and politicos, the people that we're advising and providing knowledge and influence to try and help them understand the world of human capital, and particularly how human capital has evolved over the course of the last 3 years as we've gone through a global pandemic.
I appreciate you sharing, not just sharing for the HR professional, but for business leaders. Because it's interesting, whenever I'm talking to HR professionals, I'm always talking about how they're a business leader first, serving
That's
the
right.
HR community. And as you said that, it really hit home. So appreciate you sharing that. Hey, I would love, and I don't know the Jim Link story. I would love for you to share your story. Where'd you grow up and how in the world did you get into HR and leadership?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to grow up in Western Kentucky on a working family farm. It was a rural upbringing. It was a great way of life for a young boy. I would spend my time working, but also riding horses and four-wheelers and motorcycles through open fields. And, I grew up in an area where I could look out my mom's kitchen window and see my grandparents' house, a half a mile through the fields, and see my aunt's house the other way. It was just a great way to learn about the value of work and to develop a strong work ethic and to realize that community matters and that the world in which you grow up shapes you for who you are today, but also who you will become. And I tried to seize upon the things that I was good at and build upon those things as I was in high school and then into college. And one of the things I was pretty good at was I was on our high school speech and debate team and competed on things and through the Future Farmers of America and in the 4-H club. And all of those things got me noticed by Murray State University, which is where I did my grad and undergrad work. And I went there on a speech and debate scholarship. And, I kind of had humble roots, right? So I needed the money to go to school. And they offered me the opportunity to compete. And that's where I learned how to talk in a setting of other people, where I was in a topical area where I might not be comfortable, where I had to improv, where I had to talk about things that persuade and influence other people to do things. And those leadership skills and those life skills I've never forgotten. And I got those, the start there. I got the roots established while I was in university. So it was a great way to begin. And I was fortunate enough, the smartest thing I ever did, Bruce, was I went on an internship or cooperative education assignment. I secured one with the General Electric Company when I was in undergraduate school. When I graduated, I had a full-time job, fortunately waiting for me, and I've been going ever since.
I love that. The GE way, General Electric. That's fantastic. You know, there's so much here. Listen, if you're listening right now, you need to get out your pen. You need to get out your journal. There's going to be a lot of great notes to take away here. I love how you talk about how you could see your grandparents' home just, you know, through your window. I love that. I grew up close to my grandparents, and I love how you frame that up with community matters. Community matters. Those are the words I wrote down as you shared that. But little did you know, taking this speech and debate, how where that was going to lead you and how that was going to serve you. Did you how did it feel to you know, win these debate, I guess, contests and different things like that?
Well, you know, I think what it did was the competition itself really confirmed the idea that no matter where you grew up or the schools you went to or the things that you did, that if you put enough effort or thought into something, you could compete on a national stage. And that's exactly what we did. A couple of years before I arrived at Murray State, they had the national championship debate team there, you know, for, you know, a small regional university or mid-sized regional university, you know, had the national championship debate team. And of course, that was in the 1980s. And I wanted to be a part of that, right? I wanted to be a part of something that was fantastic. And so I put the time and energy and effort into doing that. Plus, I met all these really talented, smart, capable people who turned out to be great friends and still are. And that story that really impacted me was that I was able to compete on that stage, and it gave me a degree of confidence and capability that I needed, desperately needed, and kind of secured and solidified that thinking that I could do whatever I set my mind to do.
I love that. I always talk about how the important communication is, and if you can communicate well, you can go a lot of places. I was thinking about when I joined Armstrong back 2004. My boss, thank you to my boss for encouraging me to take Toastmasters. He said, "Hey, I want you to find a Toastmasters club," and at the time I was thinking, you know, I want to be a better communicator. And at the time I was thinking I was going to be in front of leaders in organizations, and we're going to need to talk about the things that we're doing. But little did I realize how it was going to serve me in so many more places than that. And so that I love that. Hey, I'm curious. You mentioned you met a lot of great people. Here you are, you know, you're CHRO, but you probably had some people that maybe, I'll use the word mentor, maybe mentored you or helped you get to where you are today. I always like to talk about that. Do you have any mentors and people that have helped you? And if so, what was it about them that helped you?
I've had many mentors, and I think some of the people that I learned from didn't even really know that I was learning from them, right? So I'm a lifelong student and a lifelong learner. And so I try to grab the bits and pieces from everyone I can, both positive and constructive, right? Things that I can seize upon in order to help build out my own leadership platform and my own leadership portfolio. I learned very, very early on, and this is related, I think, to the speech and some of those types of things from earlier in my life, that a leader's most powerful tool in their toolbox is verbal and written communication skill. And if you have that, you combine that with the appropriate degree of emotional intelligence, an empathetic listening skill and capability, and enough street smarts to be able to help someone navigate through whatever it is that they're going through on the work site or work scene, then that's leadership 101. And if you have those skills and those capabilities to do those things, you're going to build followership. And that's what leadership is all about, is taking people on a journey with you. And it's best, Bruce, whenever those people don't even know that they're on the journey. Right. So I love working with people who are able to lead. It's a natural leadership process or way of leading where that they just take people to a level to where they never would have imagined themselves going prior. That's great leadership.
I love all of that. I have chills as you shared that. I love how you talked about, the communication, written and verbal, that can be like, that could be your most powerful tool that you can have. But you said a word that I've talked to some guests on the show recently, and the word just keeps popping up more and more. And that word is followership.
Absolutely.
I love that word. I would just love for you to give some perspective on followership, because as people, the more people talk about it, the more people talk about it. Great leaders are really great at empowering, giving their team tools, and then they just kind of follow their lead.
Yeah. Related to this idea of followership is another, other than having great empathetic and emotional intelligence and empathetic listening skill, as well as written and verbal communication skills, you as a leader need to be known for something, right? And this idea of being known for something, I believe, is what really helps to create followership. I mean, I have gone to work for individuals who are fantastic leaders because they had something in their portfolio that they were particularly good at. And I'm not talking about a business portfolio. I'm talking about their interpersonal portfolio that was a skill or a capability or a competence that I knew I needed to build out or to develop. And because of that, I wanted to follow that person, right? I wanted to understand who they were and what made them good and what made them great. And that idea of being known for something creates, often unknown in other individuals, this idea that you want to follow them for some reason. It may be that they're aspirational. It may be that the work that they do is meaningful. It may be that they're very process oriented and you're not, right? Or that they're very idealistic and you're not, right? They have something that you covet, right? That you want to learn from them, and that you know that if you follow them along on that journey, you can be better. Jack Welch was one of those people, right? Jack Welch, in the early GE days, Jack Welch knew, and he said this in different ways over the course of his career, particularly after he retired, that he knew he had gaps, and so he surrounded himself with people who could fill those gaps, right? That creates followership. Right. When you understand, when you're smart enough about and have enough insight about your own skill and capability as a leader, that you can surround yourself with others who fill in those holes, man, what a fantastic leadership experience that is. And that's part of the definition of followership. The best definition, though, is those people follow you because they know that they're going to go on a journey. And that journey is one that they may not even know where they're going. It may be a destination unknown trip, but they're heading down that pathway.
This is so good. This is so good. I appreciate you sharing that. I just wrote down, be known for something. That there's some people right now listening, and I know they're thinking, what am I known for? What am I? Okay, let me kind of start. And that's where kind of thought leadership starts, like really investing time in thinking, and then looking for the gaps.
You know what, Bruce? It may be, there are people who have skill, right? That leaders that have a skill that you may not have. They may have a competency. There may be a behavior, right, that they have that you need to build out. It need not necessarily be a hard skill. As a matter of fact, I think the best ones are more related to the softer sciences, where that you need to develop a way of doing something that's not so written in the textbooks. It's more of a behavioral approach to a leadership opportunity. That's where the magic really happens.
I'm glad you shared that, because I always talk about whenever people are going through tough times, I think one of the things we can do as leaders is we can smile and we can encourage. And those are those soft skills, as well as identifying those areas and trying to help people kind of find their lane, I guess, if you will. And encourage them. I love that.
That's right. And Bruce, right now, the most underrated leadership skill out there, and this became in living color, loudly clear over the last 3 years, is the ability to empathetically listen to another human being's concerns. We know this is a huge problem right now because of the mental health crisis that's happening in America. We understand that all of that skill and capability to empathetically listen as a leader is today your magic sword, right? That is the thing that you need to carry loudly and clearly and visibly for your workforce.
I've shared this. I've shared this with Dr. Alonso. I've shared this with several guests on the show. That the word empathy. I mean, it's been in the dictionary for a long time, but it has really been amplified more than ever. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe since the pandemic, I guess that maybe that's part of it. But I remember, our CEO Johnny C. Taylor Jr. just really just putting that spotlight on it at SHRM 2022 in New Orleans, which was absolutely fantastic. And I'm excited about 23 coming ahead. But no, you're right on. I love that. I love that. So, okay. So I want to frame this up here, because I always like to ask my guests, leadership. If someone were to say, Jim, hey, I'm hearing this word leadership. What is leadership? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, it's first of all, it's situational. And a lot of people think that it's a static thing, but leadership is not this static thing that happens. It's very situational, and it ebbs and flows with the need of individuals. I have a very strong team of HR professionals that work with me every day at SHRM. And of course, we're advising 318,000 other HR people around the world. And each of them are unique individuals. Each is a unique individual in our organization. And each requires a different type of leadership experience from me as the person. And so that's very situational, and it's very dependent upon the task or the opportunity that's in front of them and us as an organization. And I always encourage people to really understand what's important that each individual that works on your team needs from you as a leader. And if you can have that and demonstrate that and live that, then I think that situational awareness and that situational capability is key and is important, and becomes really the thing that you become known for, is the ability to adjust and move and really understand the unique and individual needs of those folks who are on your teams. That's where it starts. And then if you get that right, those people will follow you. That develops that followership that we talked about, and they will go with you on a journey anywhere that you strategically decide to lead them. Those are the things that are important for leaders in my mind, in addition to having the core competencies of empathy and emotional intelligence and all of the other things that are required in order to really help an organization and an individual succeed. That's leadership.
I appreciate that. And I've always thought also about some of these, when you talk about, by the way, 318,000, talk about community matters. That's a lot of people. You talk about leading in your team and getting followership, but a lot of times leading is also about, you hear the term coaching up as well. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So especially for departments of one, I know there's a lot of department of one leaders, department of one HR leaders that listen to the show as well. A lot of times they're challenged. And I always talk about, the importance of, developing influence and just continuing to coach up things that you believe in and things like that. Is that part of that leadership, that followership as well? Talk about that.
Certainly. Absolutely. Goes without saying, it is. And for folks who are in small or medium-sized businesses, they have, I believe, the most unique opportunities right now of any individualized group of people, because of everything that's been going on, not just with the pandemic and a global health scare, but also with the social justice crisis, with the caregiving crisis, with the skills crisis, which we're dealing with now, and a possible economic crisis, on the window of 2023. Those are things that leaders in those small and mid-sized organizations feel more intensely and more purposefully than leaders would in larger organizations, perhaps. And I think that those individuals in particular must build a network and a group, a community of individuals for whom they can go to for knowledge, for information, for consolation, for consideration, for all of those types of things, to help them really understand what they might need to do better, or to just be that listening ear, that safe, psychologically safe place for people to be. and people in those, we host some things in SHRM called assemblies. And these assemblies are just that. They are these groups of people who are together for that purpose of learning, for collegiality, for community, for everything that you would want to rely on a group of trusted colleagues to help you get through. That's certainly part of your brand. That's part of your leadership skill, and knowing how to tap into that resource when something just doesn't feel right, or the hair on the back of your neck standing up, or so that's what those folks are there for. And particularly for people in small and mid-sized organizations, those groups are very, very important.
That's fantastic. I wrote the word assemblies, so I will highlight that as well. That's one of the things that I talk to many of my business partners, customers, and HR people in the Texas SHRM community, the importance of getting out of the office and being part of community. I just think that, I feel like I'm almost like on a mission to help people, because I remember when I joined Dallas HR, right? The third largest SHRM chapter in the country. And I remember how overwhelming that felt early on, but how it's really shaped and impacted my life from the time I joined and didn't know anyone till the time I was president, and today serving, Texas SHRM. And a lot of people talk about, hey, I'm busy. It's hard for me to get out. And I'm like, listen, we got to find a way, because I'm telling you, the return will be like no other. If you can find people to build, you put it the best, to really build community.
When I talk to retired executives or people who have left their roles, and made changes in their life or what have you, the single biggest regret those people share with me is the fact that they did not build a strong enough community around them. And I just find that fascinating, because on the other side of that, right, the flip side of that is do it now. Build that sense of community around you for your own betterment, for idea generation, for that psychological safe place, for whatever it is that you need. Once you build that community, it should be elastic. It should ebb and flow. It should be a group of people to which you're both bringing people into your community and moving on from others. Those types of things are vitally important for leader success. And like I said, when you look back at it and you hear loudly and clearly that that's one of the things that people regret, then by golly, by all means, go and do it now.
I love that.
So I think that's two tools now, Bruce, we've talked about, right? That verbal and written communication skill, and the absolute need for network development and to build your own network or community, whichever you prefer to call it.
Yeah,
those two things are vital, and you and I are both living examples of why that works, right? Well, I've never met a successful person who did not have some sense of the network around them that they either helped generate or that they relied upon at some point in their career.
This is gold, folks. I'm telling you, I know you're writing down a lot of notes right now. Hey, let's jump into, you mentioned looking back. Let's look back at 2022. I would love to hear, I call them your mile markers, right? These are just moments that you just look back and you're like, I remember that very clearly. What are some of the things that, as you look back at 2022 that stood out to you? And then let's talk about, what's on the horizon for 2023.
2022 was a year of recovery for a lot of people in a lot of organizations. The things that stand out for me is how human resources in particular helped their organizations and their communities navigate through a series of things that could have been crises if we had not have managed them appropriately. One early in the year, obviously, was the remote work versus hybrid work versus return to the office work, right? And so SHRM did a lot of research around where organizations were as a percentage in any of those three categories. Were they hybridized? Were they fully remote? Were they, all fully back in the office? And we were able to share that knowledge and information with our colleagues around the world from a human resources perspective. So the whole flexibility and agility theme was alive and in living color, certainly early in the year, and particularly as the Omicron variant of the COVID-19 virus began to wane in our society and people actually started to get back to work. So we were able to provide advice, guidance, and structure on what we found in our own research related to that. So that was one thing that really pops into my mind, but that's in a bigger theme of flexibility and agility, which I think is vitally important. The second thing, it was a year of transition and change for organizations, not just around flexibility and agility, but preparing for returning to a world that was pre-COVID. And what organizations learn, particularly from a human capital perspective, is that we will never return to a world that was pre-COVID. And some CEOs, I think, had a lot harder time with that than some others, right? But adjusting and moving on, right, became part of that game as well. Another thing that I thought was very, very important when you think about all of the changes that occurred was really around the skills gap. And the skills gap became loud and clear in living color, right? As I like to say, the skills opportunity was already a challenge prior to the pandemic, and it certainly continued to grow and to be one in 2022. And when we talk about 2023 here in a minute, Bruce, that's one of the things that keeps me up at night, right? Is the whole skills gap. Yeah. The third thing I will just mention is really tied to preparation. What I saw human resource and human capital leaders doing this year, probably, or 2022, probably better than any other year, was preparing their workforces for economic headwinds. And when I'm talking about the economy, we had a lot of the people who study the economy every day telling us that we were in a recession, then we weren't in a recession, then we were in a labor drought, then we weren't in a labor drought. And I love reading these articles that show up often in our nation's leading publications about why the economists are continually getting it wrong. And they're continually getting it wrong because we're working with a completely new set of variables, right? And that whole idea of being business savvy and being super smart about the labor market and the skills market in particular, I've seen great knowledge gained and great practices put in place by human capital leaders in 2022. And I think that's super exciting. And then I think the last thing I'll wrap up with is the thing that I also worry about that we saw in 2022, loudly and clearly, that's not going away. And that is the mental health crisis that is impacting the global workforce. SHRM's own research shows that more than a third of people report being in a worse state of mental health since the onset of the COVID-19 crisis than they were prior to the onset of the COVID-19 crisis. That is a wake-up call for every human capital leader out there. And if you're not putting programs, practices, and things in place to help address that in your organizations, I fear for what you will be dealing with in 2 to 3 years. So the idea is to get ahead of that curve as much as you possibly can. We're not mental health professionals as human capital leaders, but what we can become are advisors to help get people to the right resources that they need in order to work through situations of whatever is facing them in their lives. We have to meet them, do a better job of meeting them where that they are. And we will do that. So those are the 4 things in 2022 I saw. And 2023, looking forward, there's never been a better time, Bruce, to be us, right? To be human capital leaders. And I think we should be taking every advantage of the opportunity to be at the forefront of our businesses, to know the business results better than the business leaders, and to apply the unique skill and capability that we have to adjust and move human capital in a way that can help any organization deliver its goals, objectives, or milestones. Yeah. So I'm super excited about that. I'm super excited about what I'm seeing from SHRM in the idea of advising CEOs, CHROs, and politicos about the things for the future and what will prepare them for the world of work coming forward. We're good at that already. There's a hyper focus on that now. And it's real, those things are really in the area of ESGs, environmental, social, and governance things in publicly traded companies, and even large, not publicly traded companies are paying attention to those things, to building cultures of belonging, inclusion, innovation, and collaboration, to looking at human capital metrics that need to be reported on a federal level, to thinking about the mental health crisis, to thinking about the skill shortage. So SHRM is spending time in all of those places right now, working with everybody that we need to be working with, and even some that probably don't even know they need to be working with us yet. We're out there doing everything we can to make that happen. And then I'm going to leave you with one theme, I think, for 2023 that I want every human resource leader out there to think about.
Okay.
Most of us were taught as we were growing up as human resources leaders, the idea that if we were somehow able to make a level playing field for everyone, right, that it was our job to ensure that everything was fair and that everything was the same, and that a one-size-fits-all solution set was the absolute best way to manage for the foreseeable future. I will tell you that if the COVID crisis proved nothing else to us, we debunked that myth. So in 2023 and beyond, it's all about personalization and individualization. And the more of the personalization and individualization that you can provide for each and every employee in your workforce, the better off you're going to be at attracting, retaining, and engaging those people on a day-to-day basis. The idea that one size fits all and is the absolute best solution set is gone. And the better we can meet people where they are, to help them with the concerns that they have, to identify the career experiences that they need in order to progress in the organization, and to help them grow, develop, and learn, that's all personalized. That's all individualized. And that expectation exists for people, particularly those who are under 30 years old in our workforce today. And it's only going to continue to grow and to be an important part of human capital effectiveness going forward.
That's fantastic. There is so much here. I love all that. I wanted to hit on, you know, when you talked about 2022, every time I talk to someone who is maybe in transition and I give them I don't know, maybe a lead on an opportunity, the first question they ask is it remote? I just think that's fascinating. Is that remote? You know, well, this one's hybrid, you know, 3 days a week. And they're like, okay, I'll think about it. I'm like, wow, wait a minute.
What happened?
Things have
What
changed.
happened?
Things have definitely listen, that's not a myth. That's a true story. And then this transition, never returning to work. I will tell you that, you know, I tell people all the time, listen, you don't go back and compare to what you were before the pandemic. You just build on today. You just got to build on today. There's no, returning back and here's the way things were. And I'm not talking about just work. I'm talking about conferences. I'm talking about luncheon meetings, different things like that. Even in the SHRM circles, I'm like, listen, just build on today and build for tomorrow. I love that. And then you talked about skills gap. I do want to ask a question around that. I'm going to ask here in just a second, but I love the preparation, workforce, economic headwinds, but the mental health crisis. Every time I bring up that, everyone has like, they're interested. They're interested. They're curious. They're listening. And so I think everybody is definitely paying attention to that. And so I love all of that. I do want to ask you about skills gap. You mentioned that you said, hey, I'm going to get back to that because that's one thing that keeps me up at night. I would love for you to just talk a little bit more about the skills gap.
Yeah, and the skills gap for me is not just having enough people to fill roles. We do not have, first of all, we don't have that. But secondly, the people that we have and the technical skill and capability that they need to possess, and I'm talking very generally here and very broadly, right? Yeah. There's a significant gap there. So the people that are available don't have the skills that we need to address the future. And I'm just not talking about future 5-7 years out. I'm talking 1, 2, and 3 years out. Yeah. Now, so if you're thinking about that as a human capital leader, that means that there's a downstream impact of that lack of skill and capability, not just in your company or even in your community, but a downstream impact on our ability as a society to deliver GDP, to continue to effectively compete on a national scale. If we don't have the skill and capability that we need as a country to continue to advance our productivity, our business cases, our exports, our imports, our everything that makes us a successful society, that's scary. And if we don't figure out a way to address this and to get particularly more technical competence into the hands of individuals who can then turn and do those things, we are going to not be in a place that I want us to be as a society. Now, you can say, well, Jim, isn't technology and artificial intelligence and all those kinds of things going to make up for some of that? The answer is absolutely, right? And the good news, Bruce, is this is completely a solvable issue, but we need to get on it. And we need to get on it very quickly in trying to determine what the best solution set is to help address what we know our country is going to need in the future and to line up those skills to do it. There are some great examples out there. It's in states and communities in particular where that they are addressing this and doing a fantastic job aligning for the future. It's just not gotten enough scale yet to be able to move in the direction that I want it to move. And it's going to require interventions by HR professionals and academics and researchers and practitioners and local community colleges and state governments. And I mean, it's a mishmash of all people who have stake in this, but we need to solve that crisis on both the hard skill and the soft skills going forward in order to really maximize our country's ability to grow and prosper.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for elaborating on that. I appreciate that. I know at the end of the day, it's all about, the awareness is there. Now let's start chipping away at this. And that's basically what you're saying. I love that. And lastly, moving ahead in 2023, I just wrote the word personalization down. And when people talk about that, the way you talked about that, like the level playing field, the one size fits all that's gone. Yes. I'm a big John Maxwell fan. And he always talked about the importance of walking slowly through the crowd. And we've just got to do a better job of that. I want to just ask you, for those listening, and they're like, hey, you know what? Personalization. I like it. Give me a tip. Like, what is one or two things that I might be able to do as a leader in my company to really amplify personalization?
Yeah, I think there are two big places we can do it. The first is in all things related to benefits and benefit offerings out there. There are a myriad of things now that are available where you can present a cafeteria style of benefit offerings rather than a one-size-fits-all solution set. For example, if you're a younger person in the workforce, you may ideally need, right, less of cost coverage for healthcare, but you might want more toward education or loan repayments or something like that. That's one example. So just be flexible in the way you think about it. Just don't assume that one benefit offering, for example, is going to fit an entire workforce, from a family of 6, right, all the way down to a single person who's probably not been to the doctor in the last 2 to 3 years, right? So as much flexibility and agility in that around benefits as you can offer is certainly one place. And the second, clearly, and is the best place, is in learning and development. If you have the opportunity to personalize and to tailor an approach to address both hard and soft skill gaps that an individual might have in your workplace, that's the best place you can personalize. And what's better, Bruce, about so many of those things is that a lot of them are now becoming very low cost or even free, right? Where you can develop and grow that. And it's not just a learning and development exercise. Sometimes you get your best learning from mentorships and reverse mentorships and coaching, and just having a buddy or a partner who's willing to take you on a journey in your current organization to show you a new experience or to give you a new skill. That costs nothing. And if those things can be either formal or informal, but either way, they have an impact.
Love it. It's just a matter of putting them on your priorities list, right? For 2023, this is what we're going to do. We're going to focus on benefits, and we're going to focus on leadership and development, and just kind of like, hey, one brick at a time. And then you look back a year later and you're like, wow, look at the progress we made in this space of personalization. I love how you use that word. I hadn't heard that word used like that. And that's fantastic. This has been so good. Jim, listen, I told you the time was going to absolutely fly by. I've got 5 more pages of questions. We could do this all day long, but I want to wrap up. Before we go, it's time to accelerate. I always like to ask this one question around advice. And I always like to ask, hey, were you ever given any advice? Maybe it was back there when you were, in the debate club, or maybe early in your career or late career. Any advice that you've been given that you just find yourself sharing with others?
We mentioned it earlier, actually. It's ensure that you're taking others on the journey with you. Mm-hmm. And I think as a leader, sometimes you get out a little bit too far and you assume that everyone knows exactly what you're talking about and that everyone's all aboard and aligned. but constantly checking in to ensure that everyone is on that journey with you is, I think, the single best advice that anyone ever gave me. And the one that my parents taught me, all those years ago was always be grateful and appreciative of what you have and those around you. And I try to live that every day.
That's fantastic. I love that. That's great advice. Great advice. I love this. And we're going to go to, it's time to accelerate, last part of the show. And I'm sitting here writing notes. I've got a full page of notes here. I can't wait to share this. I always like to ask, though, a few fun questions. Book or podcast, any preference, and you have a favorite?
I do both. I just finished reading again, Trusted Advisor by Charles Green. It's a requirement for anybody who works in the human resources space because, particularly as you get higher in those HR levels, that's exactly what you should be to the entire leadership team and to shareholders and communities, is a trusted advisor.
That's fantastic. I have not read that. I will be putting not only the link in the show notes for people to order that, but I'm going to order that as well. I can't wait to get my hands on that. That's fantastic. You mentioned that you've been, one of the things that you've taught to be grateful. Like, talk about like gratitude. I would love to hear, what are the things you're grateful for?
Family. I have 4 wonderful children and a lovely wife. I'm married way outside my league, so everything's good there. I'm grateful for opportunity. I'm grateful for the trust that people put into me. And I'm always grateful to learn because I'm a lifelong learner.
I love that, lifelong learner. And I'm grateful for you for coming on the show today and sharing your perspective. I would love to hear, like, outside of the workplace, like what energizes you?
Oh, I love water, and I'm a boater by nature. I love to jet ski. Anything that's on a water, and by the way, fresh water for me. I mean, the ocean's nice, but I get tired of the salt. So I'm kind of a freshwater kind of guy, and we're fortunate enough to have a property that's on a lake, and that's where I'm going to retire. What if I ever do? That's a place where that I will kind of hopefully put my feet up on the dock and relax and think about what might lie ahead across that water.
That's fantastic. I love that. I didn't have this on my questions I sent you, but I do want to ask you, are you, we were talking about looking ahead at 2023. I'm also looking ahead to the SHRM conference coming up in
75th year, Bruce. We are super excited. I think if you ever go to an annual conference, this will be the year to go. Obviously it's our 75th anniversary, so we have a lot of extra special things planned for the 75th. It's going to be in Las Vegas, and we believe even more that that's a great place to come and learn and enjoy and spend time with, hopefully 18 or 19,000 of your best HR friends.
You talked about, we talked about earlier about building on today. You don't look back, but I will tell you, when I was in New Orleans, I was so optimistic, you could feel the building begin. So I look for it to be even bigger in Las Vegas. I am excited about one of the keynotes, Mitch Albom. I love Tuesdays with Morrie. And so when I saw he's going to be one of the keynotes, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
And
I know, Bruce, there's a whole generation of people who are newer entrants into the workforce who do not know him. But yet his story is so powerful and so intergenerational. We can't wait to share him and others with our entire audience.
And I know there's a lot of buzz around. One of the entertainers has already been mentioned. Janet Jackson's coming. And I'm like, wow, that's big time. A lot of people are excited about that.
That's huge. And we just announced that last week. And let's just say that registrations went up pretty quickly after we announced anything.
That's fantastic. I love that. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'll put some information in the show notes. If you're listening and you want to find more about the SHRM National Conference that's coming up in June of 2023. So much to look forward to. I'm so grateful for you coming on the show today. I do have one final question. This is one of my favorite questions I like to ask. And that's Jim, 10 years older, and he's knocking at your door. And you're going to go answer that door. What's he going to say to you?
He's going to say, Mr. Link, you need to take some time to enjoy your success and to appreciate everything that's around you. That's what he would say. And I have to practice that. I got to get better at that.
I love that. I was just talking to my wife about that on our way back from Oklahoma just last week. And she said, I was sitting there, I was writing down my goals. Like I'm like always thinking ahead, like what do I want to do? And then I stopped for a second. I said, we've accomplished a lot of great things, and we started talking about some of those things, and it was just like, it was refreshing. It's like, what, we've done a lot of good. Let's keep going, but let's celebrate and enjoy the good that we've done.
That's absolutely right. And I've got to get better at that because I'm always on to the next thing, right? Whatever it is. I need to stop.
I
Stop
know
it.
it. I know it. I am too. Listen, Jim, this has been, I'm so grateful for you again, coming on the show, sharing your wisdom, your perspective. I know there's some people listening that got a lot out of this, and they're probably going to want to know a little bit more. Maybe they want to follow you or connect with you. What's the best way for someone to connect with you?
Sure. The best way is just, as you mentioned, is to follow me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I have an open follow policy, so anybody can follow me. And then I'm also still on Twitter. I'm thinking about that decision, but it's at JimLinkHR. Those are the best two ways to see the body of work that we produce and that I share out there across my communities.
Well, again, I wrote the words, be known for something. I know that that's going to trigger a lot of thought. I love that. I appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship, and I can't wait to see what's ahead for 2023. And so thank you again for coming on the show. Very much appreciated.
You're welcome, Bruce. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Can't wait to share. I'll talk to you later.